Welcome back to the San Diego Opera Podcast. I'm Nick Ravelis, and my guest today is Alfredo in our production upcoming of La Traviata by Verdi, Jesus Garcia.
Hey,
Welcome.
thank you.
You're making your debut with us in this great role in this amazing opera. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Houston, Texas.
Why is every new singer from Houston?
Yeah.
And from Texas. We have a lot of singers coming out of
great
Texas.
singers from Texas.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I can think of, God, at least a handful of people I went to college with who are having major careers.
Well, and David Portillo is coming
I
to
know
mind,
David.
who is just here as the prince in Cenerentola.
Oh, brilliant. I love
Yeah,
David.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that's great. So you grew up in Houston?
Yeah, I grew up born and raised in Houston, and was really lucky to have great public schools where I grew up in the NASA area.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very good public schools, great music programs, and the particular schools I ended up with had very strong art and music programs. So
rare.
yeah,
And
and
that's great
my
for you.
parents didn't have the money to do for anything private lessons or private school or anything. So everything I learned up until when I started studying private voice in high school was completely free public education, and
Wow.
that was a real blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in high school, were you like in the choir or
Oh yeah, I
chorus?
was in two choirs.
Oh.
Yeah, I was in two choirs in high school and in the church choir. So
Uh-huh.
3 choirs, 4 choirs. I also did a community choir. I couldn't get enough. So I was in everything I could, and I was also in drama. I did a lot of straight acting.
Did
back
you
then.
did you love music? I mean, that
Yeah.
much that you just wanted to be involved in everything?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I loved music so much that when I would get in trouble from my parents, the first threat was to remove me from, or to sort of, take away some music stuff, which got me in line very quickly.
That rings a bell.
Yeah.
And then where did you do your college work?
I went to University of North Texas
Mhm.
in Denton, where LaTanya Moore, who was just here,
Yeah, exactly.
LaTanya Moore and I were there together, studied with the same teacher, and
Oh.
yeah. So we moved to the East Coast together, and kind of have had a very parallel kind of studying.
We love her.
I know. me
We
too. She's
absolutely
great.
love. She's been here twice now,
Yeah.
and she's just terrific.
Yeah,
Just
she
terrific.
is.
Young artist programs.
Not really. The only one I did was Central City.
Oh.
Central City. The year before, or the summer before, I went to AVA.
Uh-huh.
So, well, and I also did Siegel Music Colony,
Okay.
which Darren Keith Woods runs, and that was the year before that, and that's kind of where I met kind of really pivotal people that brought me to the East Coast. I met an agent who knew the voice teacher that I would end up studying with, Bill Schumann at AVA. So
Again, a name renowned
yeah,
in the tenor world.
yeah.
Does every tenor in the world study with Bill Schumann?
Lots of them do. Lots of them do. Yeah.
And
yeah.
he's based at AVA. Tell us a little something about AVA.
I didn't know much about it before I went there. I just knew, as a student at University of North Texas, I did, the Dallas Opera had a young artist competition every year, and our teacher really got us into doing that. And so Jonathan Pell, who was the head of Dallas at the time, took a real interest in both LaTanya and I, and kind of became a mentor for us. And it was he who recommended Bill when I kind of asked him, like, where should I go after this? He was like,
Right.
well, you certainly should go to the East Coast, and you should try and study with Bill Schumann. He's a great tenor teacher. And it was at the Dallas Opera where I met Darren Keith Woods, because I was doing the student production of Turandot. I was doing Pong.
Oh.
And Darren was doing the Emperor in the main stage production. And that's where I met him and sang for him. He invited me to Siegel Colony, and it all just sort of rolled along from there. So I owe him a big one for that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, and then what was your first gig?
Gig?
As
Like
a
paid
tenor?
gig?
Yeah, paid gig as a tenor.
Wow. Well, I mean, other than, Central City was a paid thing.
But it was a young
But
artist
like
program.
as a professional
Yeah,
singer,
yeah.
my first gig was La Boheme on Broadway.
Oh, the Baz Luhrmann
Yes.
Broadway
Which was kind of a
boheme.
big first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then I had my first big debut was in 2003 with Placido hired me to do Fledermaus at Washington National Opera.
Oh,
so
fun.
that was my first big, like, in the opera world.
Uh-huh.
You
Oh,
know?
fun. That's
Yeah.
so great. And
Yeah.
it's been terrific ever since, I'm
It has.
assuming.
It has. I mean, a career is an interesting thing, and I think for me, doing the boheme on Broadway sort of opened a bit of a Pandora's box for me as far as other avenues of the art, of art. Period. I started writing a lot, producing, writing rock music, writing poetry, and I would say, like, in the years that followed that, I got a little sidelined with the creative aspect of my art rather than the operatic part. And so I feel like my opera career kind of had a good rise, and then it kind of plateaued out and even maybe went down because I stepped away from it for a little while to explore my own creative passions.
Sure. Uh-huh.
But, you know, I think as you get older, you realize that the thing that you're really, really the best at is the thing you should be doing. But sometimes I'm definitely a road less traveled kind of person in my life, in my art. So
You like to explore.
yes,
There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah. So you know, stepping away from opera is not an easy thing to do, and it's not an easy thing to get back into.
Yeah.
Because people have to hear you again. You have to kind of prove yourself. And I also had to, like, start training really hard again. It's like retiring from a sport
Sure.
for 3 years, and you have to get back in the gym, and you can't believe, like, how hard you have to work to get back to where you were. So I'm grateful that I mean, I worked really hard, but I'm also grateful that I've been given great opportunities and sort of made the most of them, and things are back where I'd like them to be, and it's really exciting to be back in opera and to be at a place like San Diego.
Well, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Tell us about Alfredo, the character. Now, I'm assuming you've sung the role before.
I have
Number
a
of
few times.
A few
Yeah,
times.
a few
Okay.
times. Yeah, some interesting productions. Especially working in Europe, you know, they do a lot of off-the-cuff versions of things. I don't know. I think Alfredo is so interesting. He's sort of I think you could liken him to a sort of blue blood kind of guy. You know, he grew up with money. His family is in the upper class. He's one of those guys who doesn't really have to worry about much. If he gets in trouble, his dad can bail him out. He has connections. He has all this stuff. And so, you know, for him, falling in love doesn't have the same ramifications as it does for Violetta. And he can't understand, you know, why she would leave him, and why, in a way, he can't understand why love doesn't conquer all.
Right.
You know?
Right. She's a little more realistic about that.
She has to be.
Although it's crushing.
She doesn't have the cushion that he has, the upbringing, the bank account. She really had to. She's an amazing woman. She's a self-made woman. You know, she's a modern day, you know, you think of as sort of like rags to riches kind of person. That's who she is. And it takes a tremendous person, and a person with a tremendous amount of volition to end up with the kind of life she ended up with.
Well, and the woman, the real historical courtesan that she's based on, Marie Duplessis, was exactly that. I mean,
Right.
she was born in abject poverty.
Right.
And used her wiles and her body to get where she was, but ended up, you know, pretty far up.
Yeah.
And being actually quite wealthy.
Yeah.
Until the end.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you bring up the novel, because I did a particular production in Germany where the stage director said it as if, so the novel, as you know, is the Lady of the Camellias, right, by Alexander Dumas. And I did a production in Germany where the stage director, during the overture, it was Dumas sitting in an audience watching the play he'd written, or the novel he'd written. They made it into a play. This was during the overture, and then Dumas kind of walks out of the audience during the overture, and the whole thing proceeds to be a flashback, as if this novel he had written was autobiographical. So she put Dumas and Alfredo kind of as the same person. So then he stepped into his memories of what had happened, and man, it was such hard work, and
I can imagine.
I'm not sure I'd ever want to do that production again because it was so demanding physically and emotionally, and but man, it really helped me dig into that character and see it from an outside point of view too.
Something that approach does that I find really interesting as you're talking about it. The real Dumas fell in love with Marie Duplessis. We're talking the mid 1840s. She dies. He writes the book in 1848. The play he writes in 1852, and the opera is 1853. This is really unusual. I mean, it was a truly contemporary story.
That's wow.
That was based in fact.
Yeah.
And now he added an awful lot to his fictionalized account.
Sure.
But it's essentially about his love affair with this real life courtesan.
Yeah.
But the very fact that only 8 or 9 years separate the real events from the opera. I mean, think of any other opera in the 19th century that's not about history or myth.
You're absolutely right.
Fantasy of
That's
some
so
sort.
modern, ahead of its time, because that happens now.
Yeah,
they'll make movies about you think about things like Aaron Brockovich, or these movies that are about historical events that just happened recently. But gosh, that's
John Adams operas,
right?
Nixon in China, but even that's longer ago than 9
Sure.
years.
Yeah, that's pretty brilliant.
It really is.
I hadn't quite pieced that together.
But
Wow.
when you think about it, that was quite daring. Everybody knew the story. Everybody had read the book.
Yeah.
Everybody knew the story, and were aware that it was based on reality, even though the names were changed to protect the innocent. But I think that's why everybody flocked to the play, bought the book, and then went to the opera.
Sure, it's like a modern day, you couldn't really compare it to, because Harry Potter is fiction, but how it started out as a book, then they created a movie, and now there's like a show on the West End, and coming to Broadway, a play, and my God, they really capitalized on the public's love of this story.
Or the opera based on Anna Nicole.
Sure, yeah.
Right? So I think that's closer to what Traviata is that based on a real honest-to-goodness person. There are fictional elements to make it a more compelling story.
Right.
But, that was written within just a few years after Anna Nicole's death. That's a fascinating thing to me, is that timeline is so close to the actual events.
That's amazing.
But
it's a real pop piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the role itself, is it vocally challenging for you? Does it fit well?
I feel like it fits well. Yeah. It's so well written. And Verdi really is a master at that. It's so well paced. It fits well, and especially where I am in my vocal development right now in my career, it feels like a perfect fit.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully my performance will live up to that
It
statement.
will. It will. It will. No, hopefully it will. I've actually never asked this question. It's mid-Verdi, so the orchestra, I wouldn't think, is ever going to challenge you in terms of covering you. I think Verdi supports the voices so very, very well with the orchestra, but I often wonder about the big concertato at the end of what would it be? Act 2, Scene 2?
Act 2, Scene 2.
The gambling, the party scene, where you devastate Violetta by condemning her in front of all of her friends and her father. That, I imagine, is pretty challenging, because you have to ride not only over the orchestra, but over the chorus and all of the other soloists singing at the top of their lungs.
Yeah.
Do you find that tiring?
I mean, look, I think one of the best things you can learn as a singer and as a and if any young singers are watching this,
They are.
is you just have to sing with your voice.
Yeah.
Because the second you start pushing or trying to make it something it's not, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And there's more opera to sing after this piece. And so...
That's what I was thinking, because that's a pretty big sing.
Yeah, one thing...
But then you've got to come back.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's really important is to know what's coming, like when you're in stage rehearsals, so you make sure that you can find with the stage director a place on the stage where you're not at the back of the stage, so you're in a place that's going to aid you in really getting over the orchestra. And also, it takes a sensitive conductor to know the moments where, okay, this is where potentially the many instruments that are playing in the orchestra could potentially cover the one instrument that's trying to, so it takes a village to make these things happen right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works great, and sometimes
It's a roll of the dice.
Yeah, I've sung in theaters where the orchestra just really loves to play like a symphony orchestra, and they don't really care to play quietly, but sometimes you just have to say, I'm not going to affect the future of my career in order to try and scream.
Good point.
Over this.
Yeah,
so you just have to hope for the best, do your best, and try and get in a good position on stage to where you can really...
There you go. What challenges are coming up for you? Any new roles around the corner?
Yes.
Do tell.
Well, I just opened Elixir of Love in Germany, and that's still a challenge because I was at the Wexford Festival with David Agler, who's our conductor.
Our conductor, yeah.
I was at the Wexford Festival this fall doing a Donizetti opera, Maria de Rudens, which was a big challenge. Real bel canto, high, but dramatic bel canto role. So during all of the staging rehearsals for Elixir, I was gone. So when I got back, I basically had like 2 days of staging rehearsals and started performing it. And I've only done it twice so far. And literally, the first time I ever did it on stage was a performance. And Nemorino's not a small role. So I have some Nemorinos coming up when I get back, which will only be my third performance spread out over these months. This is how it goes in Germany. Sometimes you just, the performances are so spread out. Not like we're very lucky in America how the performances are so succinct, so you can really stay focused.
Right.
But I also am about to do Tito in La Clemenza di Tito, Mozart.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, so that'll definitely be a challenge. It's been a few years since I've sung Mozart, and Mozart is its own animal, its own style, so I'm already grooving myself into that.
Well, Alfredo is not a bad place to be prior to singing Mozart or Donizetti.
It's fantastic.
It's still bel canto.
It really is.
It is different, but it is still bel canto.
It really is.
It's supposed to be balm for the voice, so
that's right.
So hopefully all will work well.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking forward to this. I know our audience is looking forward to seeing you in this wonderful role in this terrific opera. So thank you for being here, and thanks for spending a little time with us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Have a great time.
Thanks.
Okay.